A very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Abhishek Gupta. I'm a partner with EY and I lead the ease of doing practice in India for EY. On our session related to ease of doing business for MNCs, key reforms and way forward, we'll just be starting in another 5 to 8 minutes because our joint secretary, Mrs. V. Radha, she's just got occupied in some other meeting, which is ending just now. So we'll start roughly between 1:55 and 2 o'clock. Sorry for the delay. Just bear with us and we'll come back. Thank you.
Hi, Kishore joining. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Akshay Ballari. Good afternoon, Mr. Kishore Jairaman. Good afternoon, Mr. Kamaljeet Java. We are just waiting for Mrs. V. Radha to join the call, and then we will get started, please. So, very good afternoon once again, all of you. And thank you so much for joining this session on ease of doing business for MNCs, key reforms and way forward. We've now been joined by Srimati V. Radha, she's Joint Secretary, DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. And she's the person who's leading this entire initiative on business reform action plan for this year's rankings. Now, as an introduction, I just introduced myself. I'll introduce again for the people who have joined just now. My name is Abhishek Gupta, and I lead the ease of doing business practice for EY India. And we've been fortunate enough to be working with DPIIT on this area for the last more than 1 year. And we are also working with more than 15 state governments in this entire area of industrial development, economic development, ease of doing business, industry promotion. Now, let me just quickly set the context. But before I do that, I would just like to introduce, or I would request my co-panelists here to just quickly introduce themselves on the call or just say hello. I'll just go one by one. We have Mr. Akshay Ballare, who's the president for Honeywell India. Are you there, sir? Mr. Akshay Ballare, can you please hear me? Can you just say hello? Sorry, I'm not able to hear you. Are you on mute? Sir, I can see you speaking, but I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
You hear me okay now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Sorry about that. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to all.
Thank you. We have Mr. Kishore Jayaraman, who's the president for Rolls-Royce India in South Asia.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Jayaraman, for joining. We have Mr. Kamaljeet Java, who's the MD and CEO for Daikin India.
Namaskar. My name is Kamaljeet Java. I also represent the Refrigeration and Air Conditioner Manufacturer Association.
Thank you so much, Mr. Java, for joining, and good afternoon. And then we, of course, have a special guest, Srimati V. Radha, IS, Joint Secretary, DPIIT. Ma'am, can you hear us?
Yes, good afternoon, Radha this side, but I think there's a problem with the video. It's not switching on. I hope I'm audible at least.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you, ma'am. No problem with the video, ma'am. That's fine. Thank you. All right. So thank you once again for all the panelists for joining, taking out your precious time. And then, of course, thank you all the participants for being a part of this entire session. Now, just as an introduction, I would can I request all of you to please put yourself on mute because there's a background noise. Thank you very much. So I would just like to put some things in context so that we are all on the common page before we start this discussion. So if you look at it effectively, the government of India has taken a lot of initiatives, and of course, the state governments are doing their bit in this entire ease of doing business space. And one of the things which has happened is business reform action plan, which has been going on for almost 5 years now. And every year there is a ranking which is released by the government of India, in addition to what is being done by the World Bank at a world level. But specifically, the business reform action plan is basically helping businesses, helping smaller businesses, helping larger businesses manage their businesses better. So all the approvals and clearances which are required for them, one, they are being digitized. That is one, and then of course a lot of transparency and easiness which is brought into the entire process of getting approvals and permits from the government. Now, if you look at the last cycle for BRAP, which was 2019, it was the first time when the ranking was completely user feedback based. 100% assessment for the states was completely user feedback. By user feedback, I mean to say the industry users, the users of the system, the industrialists, the MSMEs, the large enterprise. The good point about the last ranking also was that some of the states which have not been appearing in this entire domain of ease of doing business, they had actually shot up, and their reform percentage, their compliance percentage had increased tremendously, transformationally. So if you look at some of the northern states, especially like Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, these states have done really, really well. And Uttar Pradesh was certainly a very pleasant surprise in the last year's ranking. So it definitely started a great process of states healthily competing with each other to make sure that the reforms are being implemented, those are being felt on the ground, and then the industry is able to give that feedback accordingly to the government of India team, which goes around taking feedback. Now, this year's reform, interestingly, and we've been fortunate enough to work with Radha ma'am for these reforms. This year, we have around 300 reforms, 301 to be precise, reform action point, what we call. And there are a total of 15 reform areas. So 15 reform areas are detailed into 301 reform points. This agenda for the session is also about sectoral reforms. And interestingly, this year, there are 9 sectors which have been specifically covered. I would just like to name them. So trade license, healthcare, legal metrology, cinema halls, hospitality, fire NOC, telecom, movie shooting, and tourism. These have been the sector-specific reforms which have been included in this year's reforms. And investment enablers is another area which has been added to make sure that we are also talking about linkage between not just domestic investment, foreign investments, but also the entire economic development as an ecosystem. Now, a separate reform area of procurement pertaining to industries department of a state or a UT has also been included. And in line with the Department of Expenditure's recommendations, I'm sure you all must have heard of, in implementing the reforms relating to elimination of requirement of the renewals of all the certificates, approvals, licenses. In line with that, 9 reforms have been included in this year's PRAP. We are calling it SRAP because it's a State Reform Action Plan. The concept of dashboard has also been introduced to track the state's performance and also to enable reform-wise transparency, so that there is complete clarity, transparency in how the reforms are being implemented, what are the queries being managed, what are the timelines being adhered to by the states. And then finally, the deadlines for this is 31st December is when the states submit their evidences of implementation, then the feedback, then the user list will be provided, and then finally the feedback exercise will be undertaken. So this is broadly the whole concept. I won't go into too much detail because I'm sure all the speakers will also have to add a lot of things there. But quickly, this is the overall scenario of ease of doing business. India has been doing much better in the World Bank ranking. Many of the states have been doing much better as compared to their previous year's performance in this year's action plan. And we really look forward to other states also, and even the existing states moving further up the ladder when it comes to the ranking. So with that, I will now invite my fellow speakers, Mr. Akshay Bellare. Sir, can I request you to quickly talk about what are your sense of ease of doing business, how it is being felt on the ground, what are your thought process on how to take it forward?
Sure. Thank you, Abhishek. Good afternoon to all of you. Srimati Virada, Joint Secretary, DPIIT, my fellow panelists on this, and a special thanks to CII for organizing this National MNC conference. I'll just take a few seconds to talk about Honeywell and our presence in India. Honeywell is a Fortune 100 company that has had deep roots in India for over 8 decades. We have a significant commitment in India with 3 manufacturing facilities, 4 technology centers, more than 13,000 employees, of which more than 5,500 are engineers who are innovating not only for India, but also for global businesses. We have been a very high growth business in India and been over the last 2 decades growing at double digits, twice the GDP growth of India. So a very significant presence, a growing business, a very strategic business for Global Honeywell as a corporation. COVID has had a very significant impact for all of us, but despite that, as you know, multinationals in the first 7 months have invested very significantly in India, with the FDI increasing to be more than $17 billion US. Honeywell was also a part of that investment. We made an investment to support the frontline workers by putting in a factory for N95 mass production in our Fulga factory in Pune. And the reason I bring this up is it was a great example of ease of doing business with significant support from Invest India, from Niti Aayog, and from DPIIT. So I really want to thank the government of India to enable us in a record time to put that investment in and bring that manufacturing capability in India. A made for India, make for India example, a perfect example of that, and a great example of ease of doing business. There continue to be a lot of opportunities for multinationals to deal with this COVID crisis, and there have been some key learnings. With the talent pool we have in India, there is an opportunity for us to deal with this pandemic and overcome this, and we really look for government's continued support on ease of doing business. Honeywell, for example, has done a lot to enable safer return to work, to enable lockdown monitoring in our smart city initiatives. And now we've got several technologies to enable the logistics and supply chains of ensuring the efficacy of vaccines that are going to be very critical for us as we deal with this pandemic. We have technologies for temperature monitoring, traceability, anti-counterfeiting, and centralized monitoring. And we look forward to working with the government and with other partners to ensure that the vaccine supply chain and logistics is well done so that we can deal with this crisis effectively. I'll talk now about ease of doing business, driven by Government of India's initiatives such as Make in India, Digital India, the 100 smart cities, and the latest production-linked incentive plan. India will continue to be an attractive destination for strategic investments. However, it is important for the government to ensure that the interests of the multinational companies investing in India are taken care of. I would like to highlight a few topics that need the government's attention. The first one is around financial discipline. We are partnering, for example, with several state governments on execution of smart city projects across all parts of India. And one of the key challenges we face is the collection of cash or the pending dues that we are owed. The delay in these milestone-based payments impact the overall project, and I would like to recommend the government to ensure payments are made in a timely manner so that continued investments can be made by multinationals in key programs and key initiatives in India. The second one is around public procurement order. We are unanimous in our support for Atmanirbhar Bharat through increasing manufacturing footprint in India. However, it is important for the government to appreciate that in a globalized world, increase in local content will happen gradually. Multinational companies have invested heavily in India, and the government needs to protect our interests with appropriate consultation before implementing norms for public procurement. The third one is production-linked incentive schemes, PLI. We appreciate various PLI schemes, such as those announced by METI, by DOP for electronics, mobile, medical devices, APIs, etc. This will encourage increased investments by multinationals. However, a lot depends on the ease of doing business in India, and we really look forward to government support in that effort. And finally, on clarity on DPIIT registrations, this is GFR 2017. The recent order from DPIIT have created ambiguity on the mandatory registration for companies that do not have beneficial ownership in countries which share land borders with India. There is a need for clarity on such notifications so that the multinationals are allowed to serve their customers without any procedural delays. We look forward to working with the government for the betterment of overall industrial ecosystem in India and bring the best Honeywell technologies across multiple sectors that we operate in India and globally. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present my thoughts and views for Honeywell India. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Akshay Bellare. Very, very helpful. And thank you for highlighting some of the issues as well which the industries and MNCs are facing. I'll now request Mr. Kishore Jairaman to share his insights, please.
Okay. Hello. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to participate in this wonderful panel. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here with Joint Secretary Srimati Radha and also with my fellow colleagues from the industry. As I think through ease of doing business, a few things come to my mind. But before I get into that, I'll just talk a little bit about Rolls-Royce and our businesses. Unfortunately, a lot of times still in India, I get this question as to whether we're in the cars business, but we are not in the cars business. We are in the aerospace and defense business, and we are in the power systems business. And in these three businesses, civil aerospace, as we all know, COVID has had a big impact. And to show the importance and how far we have come here, we have a joint venture with HAL in Bangalore. And it does manufacturing directly of components directly that go into the engines made in Dahlewitz and in Derby. And for a company in India to manufacture gas turbine parts was unknown when I took this job about 8.5 years back. And now when I look at it, it seems like, it's a piece of cake. And the reason for that has been, number one, the quality that can be delivered from this country, the capability that is there in this country in terms of engineers or in terms of production manufacturing personnel has been tremendous. And also, needless to say, the cooperation and the collaboration that we have got from the local government as well as from the central government in order to make sure that our venture is very successful. So when COVID times come and when there is restructuring and we had to transform our businesses, the thought never entered that anything that we have with the joint venture in Bangalore has to be impacted at all. In fact, yes, the volumes did go down, but then the volumes have picked up and we are able to stabilize that business through many trials and tribulations. So ease of doing business in India from our joint venture perspective in Bangalore in the aerospace industry, has only been constantly improving over the last 10 years. And as we look at it today, whether it be state government or central government, the interest that is there in order to make sure that there is success in a lot of these manufacturing facilities is tremendous. And I think the whole initiatives of collaboration between the states, cooperation between the states, and competition between the states is working really well. So when we tried to do our second joint venture in Pune with Force Motors for our reciprocating engine business, which is our power systems business, it was not a question at all. We took a factory from Germany and rebuilt the entire factory in Pune. And this Pune factory will deliver the S1600 engines from India for the globe and for India. And when we put it in, we thought about many different states, but eventually going into Pune and to Chakan worked out the best for us. But then in the process, we saw a lot of interest from many different states. And the interest level was such that they were willing to work with us in order to give the permissions, in order to give the permits, in order to give the regulations, the rules, everything in a very quick and very expedited manner that made our job so much easier in order to establish the factory. I'm sorry, we have some disturbance in the background. My apologies for that. But what is also very important is to realize that in spite of COVID, both sides, from the German company of Rolls-Royce Power Systems to the Indian company of Force Motors, we've been able to quickly make sure people are safe. We've been able to work with the local governments in order to make sure that we're able to continue the operations as quickly as we can, get the facility started up. Yes, we were delayed by a few months, but the delay could have been years if all this did not happen. So here's another example of ease of doing business that directly impacted our business. Now, as we speak about it, my only thing to say here is our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, mentioned it long back in 2014 or 2015. India needs to reform, India needs to transform, India needs to perform, and India needs to inform. And I think in all these areas, reforms are going to continue on. It's a journey we embarked on, and I think we'll continue reforming for a very long time to come. But as we are reforming, I think it is very important to inform people about all the reforms very consistently, so the world is aware of what all things we bring to the table in all the reforms that we have brought about. But as we are reforming, the transformation process has to also be expedited and pushed so that all these things are done very quickly. And then automatically the performance piece, I think the industry, the companies want to perform because that's in their best interest and selfish interest. But I think the perform will happen very well. And so to me, the reform, transform, perform, and inform has been a fantastic mantra that we have been trying to follow through the years of doing business in India. We've been in India for about 80 plus years. In 56, we formed a technology transfer with HAL. In about 2005, we started engineering operations in India. And so, we have grown from strength to strength with 2 joint ventures with about 1,000 people that are, were employed directly with us. And then we have about 2,500 people employed by outsourcing companies. I think it has been a journey that has constantly evolved, and for the betterment, it's been an upward spiral. Now, in order to take it to the next level, I think the Atmanirbhar program provides a platform for saying that self-reliance is the key. And if self-reliance is the key, how do we get to self-reliance? There's no shortage of capability, there's no shortage of capacity, and absolutely we have the competency. So when you have these 3 C's, then the question becomes, what is it that is preventing us from accelerating the growth that we want to see in manufacturing or in the services sector? To me, one of the areas that can probably help will be creation of programs. Many countries in the defense space create programs. And these programs are meant not to deliver to the current requirements, but to look at the future and say, over the next 5 to 7 years, how will the industry look like? What do we want to be in that industry? And there is an opportunity to co-create. And these programs can be used to co-create new products and new service models. And when that co-creation happens, not only do we own the IP, we are also going to be able to control our supply chains, and we can design anywhere in the world, but we can manufacture it in India. So I think these collaborations with the globe in order to co-create technologies is going to be the way of the future, given that we know how to operate in the digital world, given that how we know to operate in an entrepreneurship environment, given that all these reforms have happened there, the next step will be to do the co-creation models, which will automatically enable us to do the scorecard on how all the reforms we have done works today, and then the transformation process will inform us how the ease of doing business is working today. And I think this is the next level that we need to take it to. And I think it is all possible. And I think the right platforms, the processes, and the programs can be in place. And I think we are on a journey that's unstoppable. And we think that we've come a long way, and we are only very happy to share some of the successes with our joint ventures and with our engineering capabilities and with our sales capabilities in India. And I think I very much look forward to the future where India will start competing at the global level in the quality value chains. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Back to you, Abhishek.
Thank you so much, sir. Very, very helpful and very, very heartening to know about the changes and the reforms you mentioned. Requesting Mr. Kamaljeet Java to share his views, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhishek, and good afternoon, Radha Madam. Good afternoon, my other panelist colleagues. It is my pleasure to be part of this National MNC Conference 2020. I represent Daikin India, and I'm also the president of Refrigerator and Air Conditioner Manufacturer Association. So Daikin here has a Southeast Asia biggest factory in Nimrana, and Daikin is expanding now in the south with a second factory. Daikin also has a Japanese Institute of Manufacturing Excellence, which was inaugurated by Shinzo Abe and our Prime Minister on skill development. Daikin has established its operation in the first factory in 2010, and in the last few years, we have seen India as a diverse country and has changed all perceptions about inviting investments across all the critical areas to develop a correct imagery for ourselves. Although I am in this country, corporate world for the last 40 years, but what I have seen in the last 10 years is beyond imagination, and I feel very confident that the step by step we went deep within the Indian landscape to create enormous value for the country and its citizens. In last few years, I have seen it, whether it is Niti Aayog or DPIT or Invest India, and all the government authorities at different level. India moved up 14 places to be 63rd among 190 nations in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business ranking in 2019. We have also seen that there is even despite COVID, so much of FDI, and we are the third destination in the world. This has not come just like that. I think a lot of efforts have been put up, and I would like to thank the bold steps the recent announcement on PLI or PMP will undoubtedly bring about a deeper strategic implication to the Indian business landscape. Now we have talked about various reforms, whether it is a corporate tax or GST reforms or labor reforms or agriculture reforms. Indians are well aware of the wide gap between regulations and its actual implementation. The implementation still remains a challenge with a good intent. Although India has shown improvement in 4 major indicators, starting a new business, or dealing with construction permits, or dealing with trading across borders, and solving insolvency. We all have seen that, government has also worked on various tax matters, whether it is APA and all. We were the first one to sign an APA, and we were quite encouraged with that. But there are other indicators, whether it is getting the land. Still, there is a dilemma between the state governments and the central government. Also, on the credit front, registering property, protecting the minority investors, and disputed tax matters. Enforcing contracts still remains a challenge, which my other colleagues have said. So I'm not going to repeat what my earlier panelists have said. While the global concern about supply chain resilience and exposure to China is still under debate, fueling dreams that international companies will be transfer manufacturing lines from China over a period of time. The MNCs will first have to negotiate an Indian system of unfriendly bureaucratic procedures and regulations governing labor and land. I think moving from pure economics, we have to make a choice, having a deeper strategic implications in order to become a top-class industrial power nations. We have 18% of the consumers population in India, and now many MNCs have also started looking at exports. But whether it is automobile or my own sector, air conditioning, I think people look at the ease of doing business on the exports, the export-friendly policies, also the logistics, and also we are undoubtedly at the right place and right time to unlock the India advantage. We are committed and we are confident. We are putting up our international AI IoT centers in Hyderabad. We have big growth plans. And I think the next time is India's time. This is going to be India time with all the encouragements which we have been getting from various authorities. Thank you very much. I'll pause here and take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very helpful. Just quickly take up the questions after the special address by Srimati V. Radha. We'll request Radha ma'am to please address the participants and the panelists here.
Thank you very much, Abhishek Gupta ji, for coordinating this program, and all the co-panelists with me, Mr. Akshay Bellare ji, Mr. Kishore Jayaraman ji, and Mr. Kanwaljeet Jha. I thought what the points that you made are extremely important, and I've taken note of some of the inputs each one of you have given. But I would like to share with you, because I sit on the hot seat which talks about ease of doing business, that literally my bread and butter, I do it day in and day out. I can certainly tell you from ground zero that ease of doing business is serious business, and it is with utmost seriousness that the government is looking at it. And all of you will agree that while we have no doubt done very well on the World Bank's rank of ease of doing business, there's been a meteoric rise that India has seen, but we are not resting on our laurels. We have widened the scope of it. And some of the things that I would like to share with you today are regarding those. While no doubt the issues relating to World Bank's ease of doing business are linked to Delhi and Mumbai, we have decided to go far beyond that. As all of us know, like you were mentioning, that Pune is one of the cities where you're investing. There are many cities where investments are happening in many areas. So we are not going to be restricted by the confines of just one ranking. On the contrary, we are now have a ranking which is for each one of the states where we look into multiple aspects. More than 300 reforms we are driving centrally, and hoping that each one of these reforms are making a difference both at the basic level, from licensing, renewals, the kind of things that people feel harassment when they have an interface with the government. So the scope of reforms is widened. That is one point I wanted to share with you. Second is that now the assessment is not based on what the government considers as done. It is about what the user has felt the impact which he or she has felt while conducting a business. So this is completely user survey based, and this was a major aspect of change that has happened since last year. So last year was the first year where user survey became the norm for understanding what businesses are feeling regarding the changes, that are they perceiving it or is it just still on paper? No paper reforms is the message. The reforms have to be felt. And third, and perhaps India's own understanding of ease of doing business is important, because the regulatory compliances load, the burden that is felt. This is the first time that we're looking at the whole gamut of issues. Incidentally, DPIIT has been made the nodal ministry for the country. We're looking at large number of focus areas strategically important for the country. We're looking at reforms which are long pending and in critical areas, be it land, labor, or environment. All these aspects we're looking at, and some of the points made by my co-panelists regarding contracts, enforcing contracts, logistics. So we will be looking at where is this burden coming from, getting into specifics. And this is extremely heartening to see that not only industry is giving us very, very valid inputs. We have intense interactions with CIFIC, SOCHM. Over the last 2-3 months, we have identified many where the shoe actually pinches. Instead of talking about a few reforms, we are saying, where does it hurt and what is the reform and which section of the law needs to be changed or which rule needs to be modified. So it's not general, but very specific focused discussion. And I'm very sure that these changes will be felt by you. It takes time, as all of you will agree. Reforms don't happen in a day. But the seriousness which is brought about this whole thing, especially, I must say that while we have been seeing reforms for the last 5-6 years, but the COVID has given a certain amount of urgency and seriousness. And all of you agree that the kind of vision and ownership from the top, that from the Prime Minister's office regarding this issue is there. The Cabinet Secretary is extremely focused on ensuring that regulatory compliances are decreased across the sectors and across states, because all states also bring a lot of regulatory burden. They are the key actors. So we work a lot with the states and we work with the businesses. But I think 2-3 things which are going to make the major change would be that we have talked about reform mostly in terms of digitization, making the process smoother, faster, online. But I think we need to go to the real next generation of reforms where we do government process reengineering. People talk about business process reengineering, but I think it's the time to talk and question whether we at all need that process. Is it adding anything of value? Is it, many are revenue neutral, do not add any governance related aspects. In fact, they promote rent seeking behavior. So that should be the real one. Relook every single process. And here we seek partnership with businesses, because you understand best. You see us from the other side, and we'll be working with each one of you in the process that we have already begun. And we'll be extremely keen to take inputs from the industry which is present here and relook the whole process. We have a ear to the ground. We would like to hear to the stakeholders. And that's why I thought today's meeting was very important. I wanted to make the statement that we're here and we would like to listen. And therefore, this whole sweep from a limited set of reforms to a wider set of reforms, talking to the user as the person who knows best, and taking micro to macro issues, because you will understand some are pan-India issues and some are perhaps sector-specific. And we are very keen to look at reforms which are pan-business and pan-Indian reforms. For example, like having a unique business ID. Do we need to have, for example, so many identities that a business needs to have, a PAN, a TAN, or perhaps a DIN, and so many, whether we can have a single one like countries like New Zealand and perhaps Singapore do. So we would like to talk about whether it's possible to have a single license which you can use for any part of the country. If I have taken a hospitality related license in Mumbai, it should work broadly for Delhi, except for perhaps few land related ones. So to think a bit out of box, not to think with what we have, but to look at benchmarking ourselves against the global best practices would be something that we are striving to do. We haven't been very liberal with the time we have given to ourselves. We would like to race towards all these reforms, because I think time is critical, as India is positioned very uniquely today to be part of the global supply chains, but at the same time to look at self-reliance. So we think every day is costly as we slow down and look at things. So this is the kind of mindset with which we are working. And I would like to thank each one of you as my co-panelists who have given very good inputs, and Abhishek for anchoring this meeting, this whole session. Thank you all for calling me for this. I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. This was very, very helpful, and thank you for giving us the strategic overview of where, as a nation, we are all heading. So, since we have limited time, I'm first of all requesting the panelists here, Mr. Akshay, Mr. Kishore, and Mr. Kamal. Would you have anything to ask ma'am, or do you have anything to share with ma'am very quickly before we move on to the question part?
Hi, Abhishek. Can I add a comment?
Yes, please. Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
I just wanted to thank DPIIT. Honestly, we have had access and we've been able to talk to people about thoughts and ideas. I hope in the future that DPIIT is as open to new concepts and to criticisms or comments. And we've been dealing with them for the last 8 years, and it's been our pleasure and privilege. Just wanted to make sure that it's a comment that goes on record, because I don't think we could have done what we would have done without the help from DPIIT as well. I'm not saying this because you're on the line, but that's the truth that has to be said. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jaraman. Anything from your side, Mr. Bellari, Mr. Java? Would you want to ask any question to ma'am or to any of your co-panelists before we move on to the questions from my side or from the other participants?
No, this is Akshay Balare. I also wanted to just second the comment from the other panelists. As I mentioned in my remarks, the N95 mass production that we put in place happened in record time, and without the support of Invest India, DPIIT. In fact, even Mr. Mohapatra or Dr. Mohapatra called me on a Saturday to ensure that the equipment was cleared through customs, etc. So really appreciate the support that we got from DPIIT, from Niti Aayog, and from Invest India to make that investment happen. So this is a great example, as I said, on how ease of doing business in India is continuing to improve.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bellari. Mr. Java, any quick comment from your side?
Abhishek, I would not lose this opportunity because, it is just about 7-8 months back. I had gone and met Radha ma'am in her office. When I was invited by Mr. Mahapatra, maybe I was invited for about 15-20 minutes meeting, but they gave me almost about an hour. And I think today, I would only like to put on record our deep gratitude for the air conditioning and refrigeration industry, because one, it has been taken as a preferred industry for quite some time. We were behind in this. Just to take China, I tried to explain to them that China produces 110 million and we sell only 7 million air conditioners. So they said, wow. I only said that, maybe because this industry does not have a nodal agency. And Madam was very quick to note it down. The sir also, then that time I was not the Rama president, but sir actually called the Rama president. And then we had put up a presentation to them through BCG. And today I'm happy to say that, with the help of DPIT, with the help of Niti Aayog, the air conditioning and refrigeration sector has been taken into the preferred category. And we have been having regular meetings since then. And now, particularly when I have taken as a Rama president, I would like to tell you that, in DPIT, probably we meet every 2 weeks, 3 weeks on some or the other. And most of our challenges have already been actually taken care of. It was, frequent change of labeling standards because the BE had changed the standards maybe 4 times in the 8 years. And they were very receptive. Even 10 days back meeting when we put up the QCO or e-waste, they were very receptive to it. And they have taken up with the respective ministries. Today we have promised them that, the air conditioning industry, which has a potential from probably 16,000 crore to 1 lakh crore in next 10 years time, because we are becoming the next China. And a lot of MNCs have already shown interest through FICCI, through SIAMA, through Rama, and we are very encouraged. And we have been having that open sessions with them. We continue demanding more and more, and I hope that the issues which I have raised also will be taken care by DPIT. QCO matter is still remaining pending, and also e-waste. matter is pending. We also requested to them for our high energy efficiency air conditioners that the GST should be rationalized because it is in 28% bracket. So we hope to listen to that on Madam's comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Java. Ma'am, would you like to make a comment there?
Yes, I think the issues are being discussed by my colleague, Mr. Anil Agarwal ji, who is looking at that. And if I can tell you something, in the inside meetings, I've heard that this issue is hardly likely to be in some logical conclusion. But we'll wait for that to come from Mr. Anil Agarwal, my colleague.
Right, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, if I may actually invite Mr. Sumitra Bhattacharya, Chairman for CI National Committee on MNCs, to ask a question, if any. Mr. Bhattacharya, can you hear me? Mr. Bhattacharya, can you hear me? Okay, perhaps he's not on the call right now. So, ma'am, there is a question which has come to us where some of the participants would like to know something about the national single window. It is being talked about in the news as well. Would you just quickly like to mention a few things about what this initiative is and how it's going to help the industry?
National single window is one of the most ambitious steps being taken by DPIIT, along with many others that you are aware of, including the IAS system, as you would be aware of, that you can perhaps on a GIS-based platform identify the land plots that are available in any part of the country. Along with these kind of major initiatives, one of them is a single window, and the contours of the whole single window are already being finalized. The tender has been finalized. There is a software provider is well in place. The whole objective was that businesses should not go to various ministries and states looking for what really is the information all about, how do you actually apply for it, how do you track your application, and how do you process it. This is a gigantic step in bringing the whole government of India's ministries and together on one platform. Ms. Sumita Dabra, who's the additional secretary, is anchoring it, and we all support her in this venture. I think this is reviewed almost on a weekly basis by the secretary. So I'm very hopeful that it will be supported by Invest India, of course, that it will be taking shape in a very, very early form by next year. Launch.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. Bhattacharya, are you back? I understand you had a question and you wanted to ask something. Okay, not yet. So I think just to end this session, we just have a couple of minutes here. I'm requesting all the three private sector panelists to answer just one question for me. One real pain point which comes at the top of your head to recall, which takes maximum amount of your time, effort, energy as a private sector player. Just one pain point if you have to mention, which would that be? Let's start with Mr. Akshay Bellare.
So for us, I think while we are very supportive of the government's effort around Atmanirbhar Bharat, and Honeywell continues to grow our footprint in India and to enable local supply chains to really be established here. One of the current issues that we are dealing with is around the public procurement option, the PPO, and how we can ensure that sufficient time is given to the multinational companies to establish that footprint here locally. Because as most of you know, we have global supply chains, they're very complex in nature, and we need time to make the investments in India in support of Atmanirbhar Bharat so that we can be part of this, the overall initiative for India.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bellare. Mr. Kishore Jaiman, what is that biggest pain point for you?
Well, I won't call it a pain point, but I think that, this is a necessary thing we have to do, wherein we are doing all these reforms. And I think we have to make sure we are on top of all these reforms in order to gain the benefits of such things instead of having to go there and experience it. And so sometimes I think that as the reforms happen, like you mentioned at the beginning, Abhishek, you said 9 sectors are going through hundreds of reforms. I think it is important to distill it down to a few points and make sure the communications are happening at very regular levels from CII and from yourself as as a way to get it into the industry so that all of us are completely on top of things at all times. Right? I'm not saying we are not, but I think the process can be a lot more easier because there are a lot of changes going on. There are a lot of things we're doing, and you don't want any of those to be missed out at any point. So it is not a pain point, but it is something as we go forward, we have to keep course correcting in order to be very efficient.
Right, sounds great. Thank you so much, Mr. Jairam. And Mr. Java, what is that one point which you would like to highlight?
Yeah, Abhishekji, because when in the recent past, a lot of aggressive steps have been taken to support the industry, but there are still issues which have not been clarified on the import front of components, because the components which we import from the other location, because India is still getting ready for self-reliant, be it aluminium or be it copper or be it compressors. So there are components which come from sovereignty FTAs which we used to have with Thailand or from Vietnam, or even some components, because in our sector the 75 to 80% components are still imported, which I think because self-reliant we are getting ready. There are clarity issues on these. Although the port at the port they have specified targets, etc., etc. But I think this is more of an administrative hassle, which is top of our mind at this point of time.
All right, thank you so much. Right, thank you. Yes, Mr. Bhattacharya, you are back. Please feel free to go ahead and ask.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I was in the hive. Ma'am, I think I would only echo by saying the amazing work you are doing, and this is perhaps the single biggest thing, change that India can do to bring in more investments. I would just like to mention 2 points. MNCs are doing a lot of work both on soft and hard. Soft, since one of my colleagues mentioned, we at Bosch have put up a mask line and giving 3/4 of the mask free to 40 lakh COVID warriors, government warriors. And this will go up to 50 lakhs and all free. And the second is, most of us have brought in a lot of R&D. We at Bosch have the second highest R&D in the world after Germany. So I would only make one last request, which has addressed by you. We look forward to March 2021, where you'll bring in the unified single window clearance with a passport-like experience, where people can go to only one window and have everything done. This can be a game changer, ma'am, for India, but also for the world.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bhattacharya. Ma'am, before we close the session, would you just quickly like to make your last comment and address the gathering?
I think from what I'm hearing, I think it's 2-3 things that come to my mind is that I think this has to get into the DNA of governance to talk about that regulatory compliances should not become burdens. We need to have constant interface and feedback from the industry to hear to them so that we are informed of what is really happening. And the most important thing perhaps is not making great rules and laws, but translating them into reality, for which we need to constantly strive, because somewhere down the line that red tape enters and it becomes administratively hurdles, and all the good things that we speak about on paper don't get transformed. So we need to talk about, we need to perform on the reforms, not just by bringing them on paper, but ensuring that they actually get transformed at the ground level, and we constantly inform and have a dialogue with industry to hear them. So noted many of the good points that have spoken by my co-panelists, one on public procurement, another one was on imports, And third one also on about how to get the single window truly functional by perhaps by beginning of next year. And I like the word passport experience. All of us have seen a few years back how difficult it was and how it could get transformed. So I'm very hopeful that we will be able to transform and these will be felt in real time in a very near future. That's the way we are working.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for beautifully summarizing as well. I think this was very, very insightful. Thank you so very much to all the private sector panelists, if I may say. And then, of course, the Joint Secretary from DPIIT, Srimati V. Radha. This was very, very helpful to know not only some of the great work which the state governments and the central government has been doing for almost 5 years, and the changes which have been brought into the entire ranking system, the reform system in the last 2 years, and especially in this new cycle. It is very, very heartening to know. And at the same time, we also take a message, we also take learning from all of you that there are still, this is perhaps still only half the battle won. We still have a long way to go. And there are some specific reforms which, as MNCs, all of you are facing. Although, with all the positivity, all the, if I may say, assertiveness, aggressiveness, which we are showing as a nation, I really don't see any reason why we should be able to transform it into a completely, extremely, extremely easy doing business environment for the country. Thanks once again. Thank you very much.